I was speaking to a gentleman named Mo Blorian, and he lives in New York City. He's 25 years old, and he has 100 units in his portfolio, and he purchases properties about an hour and a half from New York City.
Mm.
And when I lived in New York City, I lived there for 10 years, I used the excuse that it was too expensive where I lived, therefore I couldn't invest in that area and I had to go out of state. Whereas his mindset does not use that weak excuse that I was using, because he simply he has a car. I did not have a car, but there's always a solution, right? So I could have figured out a way to get from one place to another. He drives an hour and a half to upstate New York, and he has started purchasing properties there. I mean, he started with a duplex that he bought about a year ago, and then he got a 21 unit, and then he got a 50-some unit, and now he's got 100 units, and he's got investors, and he's making it happen in an area that I was living in, and I was making an excuse why I couldn't do it in that area. And it just goes to show that whatever self-defeating excuse that we have playing in our head about a certain situation, perhaps look into that and see, well, is it possible? Or maybe a better question would be, how would it be possible to do what we don't think we can do? And are there other examples out there of people doing it? And I hadn't heard of other people who had been doing it the way that he's doing it. He's basically syndicating small apartment buildings, and he's building a portfolio at the age of 25 years old. That's very impressive. And it was a reminder that, just double check what we're telling ourselves is or isn't possible, because there might be someone, and quite frankly, likely is someone who's doing what we don't think we can do.
Exactly. Living in an area that has really expensive properties and not knowing what to do is another common thing that you'll see people ask on BP. And most of the time, one of the recommendations is you got to just go outside of your area a little bit, an hour and a half. For Mo, again, I don't know his personal situation, but he's 25 years old. I'm assuming he's single, and that's like the perfect time to do that too. You don't have many commitments, and you can spend an entire weekend, because you can technically just do what he's doing I'm assuming he just probably does it on the weekend. He just drives down there on the weekends to his properties, or just to learn the market. Hour and a half is really not that far. You can just do it on a Saturday. But yeah, so go ahead.
No, you first. Sorry.
Well, I'll let you the subject so you can address what I was going to say there.
Oh, and I was going to say, when I was in New York City, I would use the excuse, well, I don't own a vehicle. Way too expensive, especially for what I was earning at the time, to own a vehicle.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts of other options. You could, you could take a train up, to wherever, a close location where he's at, and then you can Uber around, or you could rent a car for a day, or there's all sorts of different creative ways that you could approach it. So there's always a solution. It's always about not a lack of resources, but lack of resourcefulness. And I clearly was lacking resourcefulness when I was living in New York City, because I didn't think of this idea. And it's one thing that I should have done. And props to this gentleman, and hopefully this inspires other people who live in a city that is very expensive, and are using that same type of excuse that I was.
Yeah. Another common one is not having the money either, and I'm sure he might have had that excuse as well. And it looks like he's raising capital for his deals. So that's again the solution that he came up with. So he had two problems: probably lack of capital and lack of easily accessible deals that he can afford. And he solved both of those by 25. That's really impressive.